Hi, YouTube fam. It's Daughter of the Most High. A couple days ago, I listened to a teaching by Derek Prince, and I want to share with you just a little snippet from the beginning of that teaching. I really like Derek Prince, and I have listened to a lot of his teaching. So let's go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll get into our subject for tonight.
I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Picture a single candle on a table in a dark room, one flame holding the whole darkness back. That is you tonight. You may not feel like much of a flame right now, but you are burning and the darkness has not put you out. You came to this teaching for a reason, and I do not believe that reason is coincidence. My name is Derek Prince, and I have spent more than 5 decades studying the Word of God and standing with people in some of the darkest places the human soul can enter. I have prayed with men and women on 6 continents. I have seen things that would unsettle the most sophisticated theologian. And one of the things I've seen again and again, far more commonly than the church likes to admit.
And he goes on to talk about the power of darkness coming against us. I want to go back to the beginning real quickly, and the imagery that he gives us of a table, a candle lit in a dark room, and that candle is pushing back the darkness. The light from that little flame is pushing back the darkness in that room. That is us. And like he says, we may not feel like that is us, but as believers, that's who and what we're supposed to be. We are supposed to be pushing back the darkness in our lives as a believer every day in some way. So we're going to talk about that. I want to share a few scriptures here first. And the first one is 1 John 3:8. And this one says, "The person who keeps on sinning belongs to the devil. The devil has sinned from the beginning." Here's what I'm getting to. The Son of God came to destroy the works of the devil. The Son of God came to destroy the works of the devil. Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords and the Son of Almighty God, and he is our role model. He is the one that we are supposed to pattern our lives after, and by pushing back the darkness in our life. And that may be, well, I'm going to wait to get into that. We're to be pushing back the darkness in ourselves and in others, okay? And in our circle. The other verse, and you know this one, we all know this one. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." Let's read that again. "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, and against the world forces of this darkness." Now, you know this was written 2,000 years ago, and look at the darkness now. Against the world forces of this darkness and against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. When believers attend church and Bible studies, this topic should be central, a common primary teaching when we go to church, when we go to a Bible study, and when we are talking with fellow believers, is how we are pushing the darkness out of our lives, out of our own lives, out of maybe our spouse's life if we're married, our children's lives, our friends' lives, whomever is around us, and our workplace. This is what we are called to be doing, is pushing back the darkness. This also includes our ministry work. And it's a little bit easier to push back the darkness in ministry because having this position and this stance is common and acceptable in ministry. But most of us are around our personal circle, which is our family and our friends and our relatives and the people around us. That's who we're around much of the time and for years and decades. And it's a little more difficult to push back the darkness in your family. When you are called to confront certain situations, it's very difficult. You can most likely, you're going to experience a little bit of pushback. And we know that. We know that most people, including Christians, don't want to hear it. And the fact is they need to hear it. Now, let me share with you that, especially regarding parenting, and it could be your spouse too, you can address your children's behavior and say that this is not according to the Word of God. This is not how we're to be behaving, whatever the situation is. And you can call that out. But because it's your inner circle, you don't want to repeatedly call out that behavior because you will wear people out. The goal is to call that behavior out and making sure they heard you, that person heard you, and warning them about what that means for their lives. And we'll go through some examples. And then you've got to let it go. And with them, with that person, all those persons, and then you take it to your prayer closet. You war from your knees from then on. So if your spouse is slipping back into some old behaviors, has a new friend, maybe an old college buddy, high school buddy, that's back in the picture of his life and he's slipping and backsliding, you can sit down with your husband or your wife, it could be the wife that's doing this, and say to them, I realize you're enjoying this season. It's fun. You're enjoying this time in this friendship, but I need to tell you that spiritually and according to your Christian walk, I see you slipping. I see that you're enjoying this old friend. I realize that you have a close friendship or, had a close friendship that is now being rekindled, but you are letting your Christian life slip, your walk with God slip for this new friendship. And I'm just letting you know that I'm highly concerned. And you want to talk to them about it, and also ask for their feedback. Do you see this happening in your life? Are you concerned yourself about this? And see what they say. And share that you will be, warring in the spirit for this person. Reminds me a little bit of War Room. Now, that was such a good Christian movie. And Priscilla, who played the wife, when her husband was becoming interested in somebody at work, so the scenario is different, but it's the same thing. And it was that older woman, I don't know her name, and she told her that, you need to war in the spirit. You can tell your husband, what, I feel like you're distant. I feel like you're different. I don't know what's going on. I'm concerned. I'm scared. I'm scared for our family. You can say all that. And, not being sure what's going on, most of the time, most of us can guess what that is. And then you go to your prayer closet. And especially if you get resistance. Now, maybe, and this is rare, guys, I'm going to say it, it's true. Maybe that spouse, that husband or wife will actually break down and admit it. Yep, I'm getting caught up in this. And the Lord has convicted me. And I've hid this from you because I was just enjoying this season. It feels like a spark and a sparkle and a boost. And I know I'm wrong, and in God's eyes and in your eyes, and help me make a change. Now, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. But many times things don't go that way. We know as humans that we're pretty bratty, pretty difficult a lot of the time. So there's just one example. Now, if it's your kid, you have a little bit more authority. If it's a middle school kid or a high school kid, and you're talking about, like, maybe friends, clothing that they're wearing. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of clothing that would be, as a parent, completely unacceptable. And what happens is that a lot of times the kids, male or female, will walk out the door in one t-shirt or one, skirt or pair of pants, and then have the other skirt or the other t-shirt in their backpack and change at school so that they can wear what they want to wear. There are, whether it's low cut or a skimpy skirt, so your daughter walks out the door in, one of her longer skirts or a pair of leggings or something and a long t-shirt, and then changes in, has her mini skirt in her backpack and changes at school. So there are those things, and it's hard to catch. I mean, we can't follow everyone around, but these are our kids. And, if your son wants to wear a certain band, skulls, skull rings, skull necklaces, certain, crystals and things like that. I mean, these are things that are extremely difficult for parents because kids can get caught up in this stuff. They might start reading a book that one of their friends told them about, like The Secret, or I don't even know what else to name other than The Secret, but I'm sure there's things that the kids are getting into. I mean, Harry Potter's a thing, probably fell by the wayside, but that was another one that you don't want your kids reading, and maybe they're sneaking with a flashlight and reading at night. Do the best you can with this stuff and keep a prayer cover over your kids. But there's certain things that I personally don't want. My kids are grown now, they're 26 and 29, but there's certain things I'm not going to allow in my house, and I wouldn't have allowed back then. And we just have to be very careful and mindful and tell them about it. I had a friend, from college, and she had a younger brother, has a younger brother, and he used to hide his prints. We're Minnesota people here, and maybe you were listening to Prince too, but back in the day. And he used to have, his vehicle on the local Christian radio station and his Prince CD under the seat. And my friend told me about this, and I wasn't surprised. I mean, I had the hardest time putting down secular music. I mean, over and over, put it down, lay it at the cross, pick it back up. And as I shared with you, the Lord has, back in the day, I'm done with it now, but it took me so long, and the Lord had warned me about it in various ways. And I regret not laying it down. But especially these days, now there's satanic rituals around this stuff. And you might think Taylor Swift is, fun, and her, she does. I mean, she's got a talent. It's a Satan-given talent. I mean, she crossed over, from her early days. And I don't want to open up my heart and my life and my spirit to anything, any of the darkness anymore. But I didn't understand things like I do now, and have for, like I told you, 8 years when God awakened me to all this stuff. So, but if, your kids, you can tell your kids, if, I don't want you doing this, this is what you're doing to yourself. There are frequencies, there are demonic spirits attached to certain clothing, yes, certain music, and some of it's even Christian music. I forgot who I was listening to that they had shared that even some Christian music, the producers, the I can't think of it, record labels, whatever, that they are in the Illuminati. And what they want to do is, of course, Satan has infiltrated our churches as well. They're all lukewarm. The majority of them are lukewarm. But yeah, there's even Christian music that, or like, remember Michael Tate's Hole, and I used to listen to the Newsboys all the time. And then you hear what they're doing in their off hours, drinking, getting drunk, using drugs. And he, in particular, was raping teenage boys. So it's we really have to be so separate from the world system these days. So it's just not worth it. And I think, thank heaven I'm not young at this time. I don't know what I would be like. If I knew everything I know now, it'd be different. But it took me so long. 8 years ago, guys, I'm 65. I was 57 when the Lord showed me that. And I would love to be 25 years old and know everything I know now, or 30 years old. And it's just so important not to watch the movies, to listen to the music, to watch so many things on Netflix, to the concerts, the clothing, the t-shirts, the jewelry, some of the jewelry, all the stuff, guys. And again, we can warn people and we can say, okay, if your kids, like, there's not much you can do with certain, as kids get older too, as if they're 16, 17, or 18. We don't want our kids to go completely wayward, but especially if they're in public high school, I wouldn't have my kids in public high school these days. I'm so thankful that my kids graduated years ago when it wasn't like it is now. And I would be homeschooling. I just would. And I encourage you to do that if your kids are young. They don't belong in the school system. They don't. So, but we don't want the enemy to gain all kinds of footholds and hooks in our kids or our spouse or our friends. And sometimes not our kids, not our spouse, but our friends we have to part ways with, and then adult children too. And the example of that is I have a friend who, her daughter married this man that she met on Christian Mingle, and he, appeared to be such a great guy, and they had 3 kids together. And then his other side, his true self, came out. And eventually, he was threatening her and all kinds of stuff. It was bad. And he was trying to poison the kids. They were still in the home together, and he was trying to poison the kids against their mother. And she was standing up to him a little bit and saying, some of these things that are going on are so unhealthy and so ungodly, and you really need to make some changes here. And he resented her for that. He felt like whatever he did or said or demanded was law in the house. And there's a lot of Christian men like that. Like, you're the wife, you're supposed to submit. I don't want to hear your input. And the fact is that a godly husband does hear his wife's input. Well, he was not that way. And it was dangerous. It was dangerous at times for her. And the evidence of a dangerous side for him became evident towards the end. Yeah. So she had to call the police on him one time and all that kind of stuff. So it's just all that. Well, anyway, he ended up divorcing her and still trying to turn the kids against her. Well, she went to a divorce care class, and the guy that was leading the divorce care class and her started dating, and they're currently married. They've been together like for 3 or 4 years now. Well, her mom is like me. She's my friend, and she warned her daughter, You are in covenant with him, and you need to follow 1 Corinthians 7:11. And that is that we are to reconcile, which would not be healthy or safe for her and the kids, or remain single. And she said to her mom told me, why should I have to pay the whole rest of my life? I mean, she was like upper 30s. I mean, young, And and she said, why should I have to pay the rest of my life for this situation that he turned out to be so dangerous and so unhealthy? And my kids, shouldn't even be around him, and that sort of thing. Of course, he got, I don't know if it's 50-50, but some custody. And so my friend warned her and said, this is adultery, and it will cost you your salvation. And she ended up marrying the guy. My friend did not go to the wedding, but she does continue to do all kinds of holidays, babysit for her grandkids, does everything else, just didn't attend the wedding. Well, that isn't what 1 Corinthians 5 says. It says that we are to be separate. We're not even to sup with those believers who are in sexual sin. So she followed in some senses. She warned her, tried to talk to her, wrote her a letter, had me share some information that I emailed to her daughter when the Lord spoke to me about that remarriage. Sorry, my throat's drying out. That remarriage is adultery. That's what the Lord showed me and other things 8 years ago. And I shared that. I thought I could date and marry again. And I told her how the Lord spoke to me about that. Well, she never responded. And I know her. I don't know her daughter well, but I've met her daughter and babysat her kids a few times and stuff like that. So we were around each other a little bit. And so, but my friend isn't following through the whole way. Now, I have not seen my friend in quite a while, and we're going to get together for dinner soon. And I am going to mention it to her gently, guys. We got to be careful. These things are so hurtful. And so I'm going to tell her, 1 Corinthians 5 says that you're not to sup with your daughter while she's in this condition. And neither are her siblings. She's got 3 other kids. So I'm going to mention it to her, and then I'm going to leave it there. And I've prayed for her, of course. And our time is so short. We don't have time to mess around with this stuff. So that's one example. And then, perhaps it's a friend. I had a Facebook group, back in the day, and this same friend was in that group, so she knows about this. And there was a woman that, and I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, that her son came out as gay. And so she just kind of made some adjustments with what the gospel is and how grace covers this, and he's got a boyfriend and all this stuff. So instead of confronting her son and just sharing with him that this is not acceptable behavior and I will have to separate from you, maybe not completely, but you're still my son, I still love you, but this lifestyle has to go. That's how you handle it. And we can get together for lunch once in a while and we can do a few things, but you need to know that this is unacceptable behavior in God's eyes. So there's that. But most people just change I had a neighbor across the street, same thing. Her daughter came out as gay and is actually now married to a woman. And I did not continue the friendship. She lived across the street when I was actually married and, living actually about 5 minutes from where I am right now. And so I saw a Facebook post of hers where she had her hands like in the New Age stuff like that. She's sitting cross-legged with her hands like this, but it's out here, but you can't see my hands. And so she had done the New Age thing. You know why? Because it's easier. And I can pretend like, this is going to work and I don't have to worry about holiness and narrow paths and sin and all this stuff. And she did. She ended up leaving. And so it's just sad. And instead, what we're to do, like in that example, is she should excuse me, I have an itch, that she should war for her daughter in the spirit realm. That's what we do. And of course, my other friend, not my neighbor, my other friend, she prays for her daughter all the time. This neighbor across the street, she should be warring for her daughter, not doing her new age, sitting position, whatever that thing's called, that they do, and they show that. So in various, imagery, it's actually we have a grocery store called Cub, and in the pharmacy, they have somebody sitting there, cross-legged with her hands out, the hand, your forearm goes on your leg, but then you're holding your hand like that. And it's right in the store. And I'm just like, really, guys? But she should be warring for her daughter in the spirit. She should not be joining New Age so that life is easier and more simple. We've got to realize that we have authority over the darkness. Greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And we are to war for our kids when they go wayward. We're to war for our spouse when he or she goes wayward. We are to, now if your husband is becoming abusive, you don't have to stay in that situation. And I know some Christians say that, you're supposed to stay and you're shamed and you're all this other stuff for not putting up with his behavior. You know what? Get your kids and yourself out of the situation safely. And if he divorces you, which some of them do because they wait about 20 minutes to find somebody else, we know how dependent people are. Marriage and sex are such an idol in the church and outside of the church. So if he does divorce you, just stay, you're technically, it says stay single, but you're in covenant, the one flesh covenant till death, if it was a one flesh covenant marriage to begin with. And that you can still war for your spouse. I still pray for my spouse. I have warned him about his adultery. He's remarried, but he doesn't know the Lord. So, yep, I've sent him a video. I've warned him, all that sort of thing. So, those are just some examples of how we can war in our situation instead of hiding and not sharing and withholding that information. Now, yeah, you want to wait for timing. You want, time and place. You can't just blast people, but you want to make sure that your heart and your goal is to push back the darkness in these people's lives and to pray for them and war for them. And please remember that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and against the powers and against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. So you don't want to be your kid's friend. You don't want to be the spouse that never says anything. It's important to say things. If your bestie or one of your friends is going off the rails, what you want to do is share with them. I'm highly concerned about what you're doing here. And there's people that, I had a friend, I told you, and she said, I'll quit with this, but she and I were friends on, once again, a Facebook group, and she had found out that she was in adultery. And actually, he was researching it and told her, we're in adultery. And they moved apart, but they still continued talking. And she shared videos on YouTube about, adulterous remarriage and how she had forsaken it, she and he. But I was friends with her, and they kept in contact. You're not supposed to do that. And so this went on for like a few years, and then eventually she just went back to him. And she found a church that says you're a new creation in Christ. Old things have passed away. She had that young marriage. And they ended up not being compatible. And so she got divorced young and then was single for a while and then got remarried. And it was actually him that studied adulterous remarriage in the Bible, and then he brought this to her attention. Well, they did divorce. They were divorced and trying to, walk the narrow path, and they ended up back together. They should have cut ties with one another. And again, I feel bad saying this, but the fact is they truly love one another. I mean, they're very compatible and they love one another, and it's going to cost them their eternity, though. They should have forsaken their relationship. God will make a way for you when you lay this stuff at the cross. You know, I've been single for a long time, and right now, I mean, I'm so blessed. I am fine being alone. It's not an issue for me. It hasn't been an issue for a long time. I so love that. At first, I was mad when God brought that to me. I shared that, but I got over that. God is so good, and I want to be on the narrow path. I don't want to chance hell. Hell's real. I don't want to chance hell. I do want to share one more example, but I have to find it. So hang on one more second. I've got to